I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 1st, 2021 Santa Cruz Lafco regular meeting. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our director, Joe Serrano, to
You're
call
going to have
the
to
meeting.
get the coffee. I got to figure out why I'm still muted.
Let me just mute the other commissioners.
Okay. Actually, I'll turn it over to the clerk, Chris Carpenter, to call the roll.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cummings. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. And I will start the roll call. Commissioner Jim Anderson. I see Jim is on, but no audio, so I have him in attendance. Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Manu Koenig.
Here.
Chair Justin Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Yvette Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner, let's see here. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Rochelle Lather.
She's not here yet, but she should be joining us soon.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And we also have alternate Commissioner Ed Banks.
I see Commissioner Ed Banks in the public portal, so I'm promoting him to the panelist, so he should be joining us now.
Excellent.
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. And alternate Commissioner John Hunt.
Here.
Great. And for the record, we have a quorum.
Hey, Chris, I know you don't love me anymore, but I'm here too. This is Zach.
Oh, Zach, you're there. Excellent. Thank you.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
I see how this works, Justin. I get it.
I was gonna say that you were here, so I was looking out for you.
Right. My apologies.
All right. With that, move on to our next item of business, executive officer message. The executive officer may make brief announcements in the form of a written report or verbal update and may not require commission action on this item. And so I'll turn it over to the executive officer to summarize virtual meeting protocol and provide an update on the countywide fire report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, commissioners. Just a brief update. We are unfortunately back to virtual meetings for the time being because of the pandemic and the rising cases. But fortunately, all the commissioners are experts on virtual meetings at this point. But just as a brief reminder, commissioners and staff have complete control over your webcams and microphones. For the general public, their microphones and webcams have been disabled, but they still have the ability to see and hear the entire meeting. The public also has an opportunity to address the commission on any agenda item. They have two methods to address the commission. They can either send their comments via email to LAFCO staff and we'll read their comments on their behalf, or they could use their raise hand feature on Zoom and we will give them up to 3 minutes to address the commission on any agenda item. In accordance with the governor's order, when conducting remote meetings, any action by the commission will include a roll call vote. So that is the first update for the commission. The second one is just a brief status update on the countywide fire report. As the commission is aware, the draft version has been sent to all the fire agencies. We currently have 13 fire agencies that were analyzed in that report. They've had about 2 months to review LAFCO's findings and recommendations. And the primary reason to have this overview or provide comment period is to ensure the accuracy of LAFCO staff's findings and analysis. I'm happy to say that the comments that we've received thus far have been very minimal and not substantial, more like technical or typos or just clarifications, but nothing to the extent that our analysis was inaccurate. So that's a plus. We're hoping to publish the final version of that report in mid-September. One of the items that staff did identify in our analysis in July was the issue with Branciforte Fire. As the commission knows, they've heavily relied on Scotts Valley Fire to do their admin services through a contract. This contract has been in existence for the last 6 years. As of September 30th, which is a month from now, or less than a month from now, that contract's going to expire. And staff was concerned about the transition. It appeared that Branciforte hasn't developed a plan. So Lafco has been coordinating with Scotts Valley Fire, with Branciforte Fire, with their board and the residents to kind of address this issue. Lafco has presented options for the district. It appears that they are going to move forward with the standalone approach. They want to assume all internal responsibilities, which is fine, but they have to make sure that they have a plan in place. To staff's understanding, the district recently hired or tentatively hired a part-time fire chief who is a retired CalPERS annuitant. There are some restrictions there. Staff is concerned of the fact that it appears that the hiring or recruitment process didn't start until July, late July to early August, and they hired the fire chief in mid-August. So that was a very narrow process, but staff's also concern is that because they are already retired CalPERS annuitant, they can only work for X amount of hours, 960 hours per year. And the fact that there's other issues with the fire chief, staff is concerned that they're going to revert back to the issues that they had back in 2015. That is why staff is working closely with their board, with their staff and the residents to develop a plan. So staff will continue doing that, but I wanted to provide this information to the commission now instead of you hearing about all this in October when the report is out. Chair, that is just a brief update on the countywide fire report. Again, I'm hoping to have that published by mid-September, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions from LAFCO members at this time on this item? Okay, seeing none. I did have one question. I'm just curious, you know, Branciforte's had this contract with Scotts Valley, it sounds like, for quite some time, and it sounds like they want to go independent. What is their capacity to be able to answer their calls for service kind of on their own independently without having the support of Scotts Valley? And I ask this because, you know, given the amount of fires that we've been seeing, you know, throughout the state, it's concerning because if a fire department doesn't have the capacity to answer those calls, you know, what could be an easily contained fire could get out of control if there's not the, you know, adequate level of support. So I'm just wondering how, you know, what you've been hearing from Branciforte in terms of their ability to answer those calls for service.
Great question. And that's one of LAFCO staff's concerns, is the fact that they only have 3 full-time firefighters on staff, and only one of them are staffed in the fire station on any given shift. So that's only one person. They do rely, and historically they relied on volunteers. That has since dwindled. They currently have 13 volunteers identified in the district. Most of them don't live in the Branciforte community. So that is a concern. But fortunately for the community, there is a mutual aid agreement between Branciforte and the neighboring fire districts. Based on staff's analysis, about 40% of all the calls in the Branciforte district have been responded by an outside agency, primarily Scotts Valley Fire, but also the city of Santa Cruz and other fire districts. So that is a concern of, if this contract ends, which it will on September 30th, what are the ramifications with the level of service, the response times? Because yes, there are mutual aid agreements, but it's not the responsibility of the neighboring fire districts to do the work for Branciforte Fire. That's the reason why they are in existence, to provide that service. And staff is concerned of how that level of service may change. And that's the question that the board and their staff should answer. And I think the residents should be able to hear a plan.
I guess my follow-up question, does it seem like they're going to have some kind of plan that will come forward prior to that, the expiration of that contract?
So LAFCO staff has been encouraging them to develop a plan. At this point, residents have been encouraging the board to develop a plan. My understanding is Supervisor Manu Koenig, who's spearheading efforts to also address this issue, is hosting a community workshop this evening at 6 p.m. And I think that's going to be one of the questions is, what is the plan? And if there's no plan in place, when will this plan be developed? As part of my recommendations in the countywide fire report, I will be requesting a strategic plan be in place. And I'm going to be outlining what that plan should cover. But it's the responsibility of the board to develop that plan. But I think if now that there's more spotlight on the district, they will feel that they need to be more proactive on developing something rather than just saying, we have a goal, don't worry, everything's okay. Things have to be in place and they have to be in writing. And I think that's appropriate for a district and for any special district. They hold them accountable for their services.
And then I guess my final question is, in terms of intervention, should there not be a plan in place? What opportunities are there for LAFCO to intervene or any other jurisdiction to intervene in this process?
Great question. And that's where LAFCO staff has been trying to provide assistance to the district. I want this district to succeed, just like I want all the other special districts to succeed. And I'm doing my best to prevent them reverting back to where they were in 2015 when they were in financial distress and internal disarray. So what happens if there's not a plan? I'm not sure, but I don't want to have that question unanswered. So I'm going to do my best to continue working with the district to develop a plan.
Great. Well, thank you for your work on this item, and please keep us up to date with everything as it progresses, especially given that we won't hear much. This item won't be before us again until our October meeting after that contract has expired. At this time, I'd like to see if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to oral communications. Oral communications is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. And so I'd like to see if there's any member of the public right now who would like to make a comment during oral communication and ask our executive officer if we've received any written correspondence or requests to address the commission on non-agendized items.
Chair, we don't have any oral communications, but I believe the next item is adoption of minutes. If we want to address that first.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, so we'll move on to the adoption of minutes. So at this time, I'd like to see if there's any member of the commission who has any questions or edits to the minutes from the last meeting. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to ask to see if there's any members of the public who have any questions on the minutes from the last meeting. Seeing none, I'll move on to see if there's a commissioner who would like to move the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll move those minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Roger Anderson, seconded by Jim Anderson, to move the minutes of our previous meeting. If there's no further questions, I'd like to turn it over to the clerk for a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Yvette Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Manu Koenig.
Abstain.
Commissioner Zach Friend.
Aye.
And Chair Justin Cummings.
Aye.
And for the record, this item passes with a 5-1 vote.
And that's 5 in favor and 1 abstention.
One abstention.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So so I'd opened up oral communications. It didn't seem like there were any written correspondence or members of the public who wanted to comment on that item.
That's correct.
So we'll go ahead and move on to our public hearing. These are items that require expanded public notification per provisions in state law directives of the commission. or those voluntarily placed by the executive officer to facilitate broader discussion. And seeing that there's no items on our public hearing, we'll go ahead and move on to our other business. These are items that involve administrative, budgetary, legislative, or personal matters and may or may not be subject to public hearing. And the first item is list of extraterritorial service agreements. The commission will receive an update on the extraterritorial service agreements currently active throughout Santa Cruz County. And so I'd like to turn it over to our executive officer for presentation on this item.
Thank you, Chair. In the past, the commission has received annual updates on the most recent extraterritorial service agreements, or ESAs, located throughout the county. Typically, the updates focused on ESAs that were approved during the last few years. However, this time around, staff wanted to not only illustrate the location of all active ESAs in maps, but also provide an overview of each one. As a result, staff has identified 41 active ESAs involving 8 public agencies. These ESAs were approved as far back as 1995 to most recently in February of this year. Before we look at the active ESAs, I did want to take a moment to explain what an ESA is and its purpose. In a nutshell, state law allows a public agency to provide a municipal service without a boundary change, such as annexation, through an agreement reviewed and approved by Lafco. The justification of an ESA under Lafco Law is twofold. One, it either helps alleviate an immediate health and safety issue, or two, it's a precursor to annexation. The commission has also adopted a policy to help address unique situations where there is no health issue and annexation is not practical. For example, the cities of Santa Cruz and Watsonville have water service areas that go far beyond their city limits. Landowners have requested an ESA approval from Lafco in the past to connect to the city's infrastructure. But overall, an ESA under state law is meant to be a temporary remedy. So for today's presentation, staff would like to briefly summarize the ESAs by agency, starting with the Central Water District. This water district currently has one ESA, which was approved back in 2008 and involves one parcel. As the map shows, the parcel is surrounded by the districts on 2 sides and is partially within the district's sphere. Next, we have the city of Santa Cruz. It has 5 ESAs involving 66 parcels. These ESAs were approved between 2006 to 2013 in order to provide water to the areas. What is interesting is that some of these ESAs provide water to existing mutual water companies, which begs the question whether these mutual water companies should be in existence. But what is more striking is that there are 2 ESAs that involve 2 separate parcels that are completely surrounded by the district as shown in the map. So I'm circling it right over here. It's surrounded by the city on all 4 ends. Next, we have the city of Scotts Valley. It has 9 ESAs involving 16 parcels. These ESAs were approved between 2001 to 2021 in order to provide sewer services to the areas. Unlike the city of Santa Cruz, all ESAs are within the city's sphere and immediately adjacent to the city limits. The most recent ESA was approved in 2021 with an adopted resolution indicating that annexation should occur in the near future. Next, we have the city of Watsonville. It has the most ESAs in the county with 17 and involve 152 parcels. These ESAs were approved between 1995 to 2021 to primarily provide water to the areas. As the map shows, all ESAs are located outside the city limits, but within the city's water service area, except one. And that's the ESA that was approved earlier this year with an adopted resolution indicating that annexation must occur once the development of the affordable housing project is completed and fully occupied. Now we have CSA 26, which is operated by the county and currently has one ESA that was approved back in 2020 and involves one parcel. The purpose of this ESA was to allow the county to improve and maintain an evacuation route that connects Hidden Valley Road with Ponza Lane. The evacuation route was located on a parcel that did not use Hidden Valley Road to access the property and therefore did not benefit the landowner to be part of CSA 26. That is why it was imperative that this commission approve the ESA with an adopted resolution to address the safety issue, but also clearly outline the specific conditions. Next, we have the Davenport Sanitation District, which is also operated by the county and has one ESA. This ESA was approved back in 2005 to provide domestic water to the cement plant. As the map shows, this parcel is immediately adjacent to the district. In recent years, there have been discussions to develop the area. Next is Scotts Valley Water District, which has two ESAs involving two separate parcels. The two ESAs were approved in 2007 and 2008. As the map shows, the 2008 ESA is located within the district sphere and immediately adjacent to the district. And last but not least, we have Scotts Valley Water District, which has 5 ESAs involving 290 parcels. These ESAs were adopted between 1997 to 2008. Similar to the city of Santa Cruz, the district provides water to certain mutual water companies. As the map shows, some of these ESAs are immediately adjacent to the district or within the district sphere, or in some cases, both. It is Lafco staff's understanding that the district has explored the idea of annexing some of these ESA areas. In summary, some of these ESAs have been in place for decades. While the residents are receiving critical services such as water, they do not have the same rights as their neighbors who are officially within the agency's boundary and considered actual constituents. Furthermore, staff's analysis shows that some of these ESAs should have been annexed into the affected agencies in order to receive the service. That is why staff is recommending that the agencies develop an annexation plan so that they can determine if and when certain areas should receive proper representation and have their boundaries accurately reflect the services that they have been providing for years now. Attached to the staff report and the agenda packet are draft letters to each agency. Staff is requesting that the agencies provide a response by December 2022, so 6 months from now. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
Great, thank you very much. Before we open up for public comment, are there any commissioners who have questions on this item? Commissioner John Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to acknowledge Executive Officer Serrano for the excellent GIS maps and other products that go into our briefing documents. It's extremely helpful to see the geography of these parcels and so many other issues that come up before LAFCO. So thanks very much to staff and especially Executive Director Serrano.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's one of the components of LAFCO staff's abilities is to create maps, because I think it really helps with visual aids to kind of discuss these certain situations. So I appreciate those comments.
Great. Are there any other commissioners who have questions at this time? Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Good morning. My question is more like about the parcels. In most cases, the people have chosen not to be part of, just to stand alone as they are, because they know, most of them know that they don't get to vote in, say, if it's a water issue or what have you, but they're fine with it. I remember one that we approved in Watsonville was kind of a island, and it was owned by PG&E, and they had really no active facilities or anything there. And if I remember the discussion correctly, if they annexed them into the other entity, their tax rate and stuff would change. Is that true?
So it depends, but when it comes to property taxes, they don't increase when they're annexed into an agency. The only time residents or landowners see an increase if there's a benefit assessment or a special tax. But if it's property taxes, that just gets divided with the other agencies if there's an annexation to occur. So that's a misconception that a lot of residents and landowners have, is we don't want to be part of it because our property taxes are going to go up. And that's normally not the case.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Yeah, most of these look very non-controversial to me. I am curious, however, about the CEMEX cement plant extraterritorial annexation. Basically, I'm curious about what is the water use at this time? Are there actually people who live in that area? And it seems like there must be a mechanism somewhere to just get rid of a extraterritorial assessment, assuming that nothing is going on that was originally motivating it. So if you can talk a little bit more about that particular item. I was a little bothered by the idea that it is considered for development at this time. And I think at that moment, Lafco should be looking at it sort of afresh. And so I'd just like to get your comments, Mr. Serrano.
Great question, Commissioner Roger Anderson. And that's why since 2019, this commission has been adopting resolutions with terms and conditions indicating specifics. So if there's no connection, this ESA would be discontinued after 2 years, or annexation should happen within the next 3 years or so. That's the primary purpose of resolutions. Unfortunately, prior to 2019, there hasn't been any resolutions in place with these ESAs. So there is no time limit or restrictions. And I am concerned about the Davenport Sanitation District situation, because you're right. There have been discussions of potential development, and they're already connected to the water without annexation, meaning hypothetically, if residents live there, they'll be paying for water, but they don't have any representation. They have no say on Davenport's actions on their water rates. They can't vote for the board members. They can't run for the board. So that is a concern. And that's why Lafco staff is bringing this to the attention of the county and the other agencies of these ESAs had a purpose, but it's supposed to be temporary. And I think we need to have the discussions of, if you've been providing services to these areas, it's time to consider annexation. And if annexation is not feasible or possible, I think the district should indicate why that's the case. And so that's why Lafco staff is recommending that we send these letters out. But when it comes to ramifications, because there's no resolutions, Lafco can't say, well, we are canceling this ESA. There is no remedy for that. The only remedy is lawsuits. And this is based on my analysis and conversations with other EOs throughout the state. If there's no resolutions with conditions, Lafco can change their mind later on and say, we're going to cancel this ESA. So that's a concern. So that's why staff wants to be proactive and work collaboratively with these agencies to develop a plan. And I think this is our best approach at this time.
So what do you think the development potential of the CEMEX property is in terms of units?
So that's a great question. I haven't heard of any development discussions at this time. I might defer to the County Board of Supervisors on our commission, but I do recall a year or two ago, there was talks about different development opportunities. That was before the pandemic. So I'm not sure if there's any recent discussions, but again, that's something that we want to address now before there's actually groundbreaking developments happening there.
I'll just add, I don't have any updates on the development plans. I haven't seen an updated plan in a couple of years, but I know Supervisor Coonerty is, I believe, sitting on the committee looking at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Koenig. And I see Commissioner Jim Anderson's hand is back up. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
So the fees associated with the annexation, how would that be, who would pay that? Would that be one of the issues with people not wanting to do that?
Great question. So the annexation fees are based on acreage, and that depends on the applicant. So it would benefit the residents if the affected agencies initiated the annexation. So they would pay for the Lafco fees rather than the residents. And that is common in other Lafcos that I work for, but it's different here. So I think it would be a form of good government if the affected agencies were the ones who were the applicants.
I believe that was the rub when we made that condition on Atkinson Lane.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions or comments from the commissioners, I'll turn it over to the members of the public. If there are any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. When you've been called upon, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll be given 3 minutes to comment on this item. And seeing no hands up by members of the public, I'd also like to ask if the executive officer received any correspondence or comments on this item via email.
Commissioner, Chair Justin Cummings, we did not receive any requests to comment on this item. I will note that some of the affected agencies, because I'm a huge advocate of transparency. So when we distributed or publicized the agenda packet, I did send the staff reports to all of the affected agencies. And the comments that I received was a positive light. They were saying, thank you for keeping us in the loop and informing us about this. So no real pushback from the affected agencies that did respond back to LAFCO after we sent the staff reports to them. But to answer your question, Chair, we have not received any requests to address the commission on this item.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing that there's no hands up in the public, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission. It seems like there's some staff recommendations on action, so I'd like to see if there's a commissioner who would like to make a motion on those recommendations.
I'll move the recommended actions. Commissioner Koenig.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Manu Koenig, seconded by Commissioner Jim Anderson. If there's no further comment on this item, I'll turn it over to the clerk to call the roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cummings. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Yvette Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Manu Koenig.
Aye.
Commissioner Zach Friend.
Aye.
And Chair Justin Cummings.
Aye.
And for the record, this item does pass unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the Cal LAFCO conference update. The commission will receive an update on Cal LAFCO's upcoming annual conference and other Cal LAFCO related news. And with that, I'll turn it over to our executive officer for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief update. The annual conference is up in the air at this point. As of yesterday, around 100 people have registered for the conference, which is historically low with only 1 month before the conference date. And this is primarily due to the pandemic and the rising cases. The Cal LAFCO board will be conducting a special meeting tomorrow to discuss the fate of the conference. It's staff's position that it will probably be canceled. That is why staff and the commissioners, Jim Anderson and Roger Anderson, who are voting delegates for the conference, have decided not to attend. Now, last month, the commission moved the October meeting date from the 6th to the 13th because of the scheduling conflict with the conference. Now that Santa Cruz LAFCO will not be attending, the commission may consider moving the meeting back to the 6th or keep it on the 13th. The benefits of keeping it on the 13th is twofold. One, it does give the commission and the public an additional week to review the countywide fire report. But two, I think it's important for the commission the full commission to be in attendance to the October meeting. because of the importance of the countywide fire report and the fact that we should have a healthy discussion. So it's really up to the commission if you want to have it on the 6th or the 13th, but we wanted to bring it to your attention because, again, staff would encourage the full commission to participate at the October meeting date, whichever that date will be. With that, Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
Great, thank you very much for that update. Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Yes, Officer Serrano, I'm curious whether there's any consideration of having a hybrid meeting at the Newport Beach time. In other words, can some people join the meeting by Zoom, or would the choice be either in person or none at all?
Commissioner Roger Anderson, that's a great question. And that's a question that a lot of LAFCOs have been asking Cal LAFCO. The issue is Cal LAFCO placed a deposit for the hotel in Newport Beach. And the hotel's position was, unless there is a statewide lockdown, you will not be getting that deposit. And so Cal LAFCO is in a position of they're going to lose that deposit and also add additional costs to have a hybrid approach, having virtual. So it's not cost effective. That's why Cal LAFCO is limited to considering a hybrid approach of some in person and some virtual, just because of the cost association and the lack of staffing to make that happen with only 1 month before the conference date. So that's a great question. That's something that Cal LAFCO will consider in the future, but I think it's too late to have to kind of revert to a hybrid approach.
So it sounds like there's no particular reason that we have to have a meeting on the 6th or no meeting on the 6th, because there won't be a meeting period.
Right. I anticipate, staff anticipates that this conference is going to be canceled, but if it's not canceled, the two commissioners and staff have decided not to attend just because of the fact that there's a rise in cases, and the last thing we want to do is go to the conference when there's health concerns, and then perhaps bring the cases over here to our county. And I think it's just a form of good government and leadership from our two commissioners to decide it's probably not the best decision to go to a large group setting at this time.
Well,
so that's why it's up to the commission if they want to change the meeting back to the 6th or keep it on the 13th.
Yeah, I would like to keep it on the 13th. I think that extra time for the fire will be useful, particularly since lots is going to be happening in Branch 40 right around that time.
I agree.
Great. Are there any other commissioners who have questions at this time? Seeing none, I also just want to appreciate the information related to the conference, because my question was going to be whether they would switch to virtual, but it sounds like it's either going to be in person or it'll be canceled. And if they continue to have it in person, then Santa Cruz Cal LAFCO won't be in attendance. So thanks for that clarification on that item. Before we go to a vote on staff recommendations, I'd like to open it up to see if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this item. If so, please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. And once you've been acknowledged, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, seeing that there's no members of the public who would like to comment on this item, I'd like to ask if there's been any written correspondence on this item from the executive officer.
Chair, we have not had any requests to address this the commission on this item at this time.
Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and I'll bring it back to the commission for action and deliberation.
I'll move keeping the meeting on the 13th.
I'll second that move.
Okay, so we have a motion by Roger Anderson, seconded by Jim Anderson, to keep the meeting, the next Cal LAFCO meeting, for October 13th. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, this is Zach. I mean, do we need a formal motion to keep something the way it is? I mean, does we actually need action on this, or can we just say that that's what it is?
Yeah, that's, bringing up that point, since we're not making any changes to the next meeting date, I don't see there's any need to take any action on this item. So if there's no change to the next meeting date, we can just go ahead and leave the next meeting for October 13th, acknowledging that this was suggested by Commissioner Roger Anderson, and we can go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda.
Chair, I know our legal counsel's not here, but just for clarification, there is a recommendation from staff to discuss and regarding the meeting date. So if the commission doesn't mind to take action to just reaffirm the October 13th date, just for purposes of the minutes, and because of the fact that there is a staff recommendation on the staff report.
Okay, so would you like the commission to take a vote reaffirming the October 13th date?
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. With that, then, if Commissioner Roger Anderson and Commissioner Jim Anderson are comfortable, then that motion will be that we are reaffirming the October 13th date for the next Cal Lafco meeting. And if there's no further discussion, I'll turn it over to the clerk for a roll call vote on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cummings. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Yvette Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Manu Koenig.
Aye.
Commissioner Zach Friend. And Chair Justin Cummings.
Aye.
And for the record, this item does pass unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, educational workshop update. Commission will receive an update on the recent educational workshop co-hosted by the California Special Districts Association in Santa Cruz, LAFCO. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Executive Officer, Joe Serrano, for a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Staff is proud to say that the educational workshop hosted last month was an overwhelming success. We had 70 district representatives register, which involved 18 of the 22 independent special districts in the county. After the workshop, staff received positive feedback as well as requests to host more workshops by the district representatives. Staff is currently working with CSDA to explore the idea of hosting future sessions, and staff will keep this commission updated on those efforts. But I just wanted to share with the commission the positive feedback that LAFCO received as a result of this educational workshop. And I hope that this will continue to occur where there's just this joint discussions among the special districts. Because I think as a unit, as a whole, they could really kind of feed off from each other and learn from each other and just improve together. So with that, Chair, this is an informational item. No action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
Great. Well, thank you for bringing this forward and for bringing together all these special districts for this great opportunity for discussion and collaboration. I'd like to see if there's any questions from members of the commission at this time. Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up for public comment. If there's any member of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please press *9 to raise your hand. And when you're given the floor, you'll press *6. You have 3 minutes for public comment. Okay, seeing no members of the public who would like to comment on this item, I'd like to ask the executive officer if there's been any correspondence received. It sounds like you did receive some positive feedback from some of the members who were able to join this workshop, but were there any other comments from members of the public on this item?
No comments received addressing this item at this time, Commissioner or Chair.
Great. Since this is an item that we don't have to take action on, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is written correspondence. LAFCO staff receives written correspondence and other materials on occasions that may or may not be related to a specific agenda item. And I'd like to ask the executive officer if we've received any written correspondence.
Chair, we have not received any written or correspondence.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our next item, which is press articles. LAFCO staff monitors newspapers, publications, and other media outlets for any news affecting local cities, districts, and communities in Santa Cruz County. articles are presented to the commission on a periodic basis. So I'd like to move to the first item, which is press articles during the months of July and August. The commission will receive an update on recent LAFCO related news occurring around the county throughout California for the months of July and August. And I'd like to ask the executive officer to give a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Chair. There's no need for a staff presentation. This is just a ongoing item that staff likes to present to the commission just to keep you aware of any LAFCO related news. There's been some around the state, and as well, there was a recent article about the Branson 40 fire that's not on this staff report, but those are the type of press articles that staff likes to keep the commission aware of. So this is an informational item and no action is required at this time.
Great. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to commissioners' business. This is an opportunity for commissioners to comment briefly on issues not listed on the agenda, provided that the subject matter is within the jurisdiction of the commission. So I'd like to ask if there are any commissioners that have, I'd like to ask if any commissioners has anything they would like to share or discuss with us at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10 on our agenda, legal counsel's report. LAFCO's legal counsel may make brief announcements in the form of a written report or verbal update, and which may or may not require the commission to take action. And so I'd like to ask if our legal counsel has a presentation for the commission at this time.
And Chair, there is no legal counsel report at this time.
All right. Since there's no commission action or report, we'll move on to the last item on our agenda, which is the adjournment of our meeting. And so we'd just like to see if we have a motion to adjourn.
Move adjournment.
All right. With that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting, and we'll see you all on October 13th at 9 a.m. for our next LAFCO meeting. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.